Hello, I'm John with Hud-Son Forest Equipment here today. We're going to do a little bit of training on the 55H and the 55H Pro winches that we sell here. Get a lot of questions on how these get wired up and hooked up to the tractors. So I'm just going to cover a few things and you make your own decisions on which winch you would like to buy, but I just want to point out some highlights on them and then we'll go over setup. So the difference between the 55H, the H stands for hydraulic. The hydraulic engages the clutch and it releases the brake. And with that system, you can operate the winch from the seat of the tractor or from back in the woods, wherever you choose to be. If you're coming out with a hitch and you got an H winch, you can easily drop the load, never have to stop, and just keep on rolling. That's one of the great advantages of it. When you come to a wet spot, hit the button, the load drops, keep on moving, you get to the other side, you can stop and pull your load in then. And that works with either one of these, the H or the H Pro. So that's the main advantage of the H winches. They're also great because when you go back in the woods with your cable, you pull it out, you get back to the tree, you don't have to come back and run the winch manually. You can walk back in with the hitch from the spot where you made the hitch at in the woods on your tree. And you can watch things. If you got a snatch block or something, you can stop it, release your winch, and make your adjustments there to get your pull out safely and without damaging the woods, your other trees. So this is the 55H, comes standard just like a 55M, only it has the hydraulic setup on it. It's got the lower pulley, comes standard with the trailer hitch. Manual tube would always be inside of one of these pockets when you receive it. We'll take a walk around the back. We'll show you the differences here. The M winches do not have none of this. They have the rope system that you pull it and operate it with. So that being said, we have a remote controller that comes with these winches. This remote controller is the one that comes with your winch, and there's also a box that comes on the winch or with the winch. This is the transmitter and this is the receiver. This you can mount on your tractor or you can mount this on your winch. You can mount it here. We recommend to mount it in your tractor or on your tractor. It's a little bit safer, only because when you're backing up, your third link could hit this box and damage it. You got to be careful hooking it up, that's all. Other than that, they work great there. Do not put it on the side over here. You can mount it on this side over here as long as it doesn't interfere with your serial plate. You can get it in there. You can drill through this side of the frame and not hurt anything. There is an on-off switch on the top of this. You got to have that on in order to work it. This here is your controller. This goes on your belt. Hook that right on your belt. You have a stop, and you've got the on or spool out and spool in. This one here is your out. So if you click this button once after you turn it on, so we're on. Now if I click this once like that, now I can go to free spool, and I'll demonstrate this, and we can pull the cable out. We hit it once more, and then that winch will drop the cable off of it. That's on the H Pro. So on the H winches, we're just going to go to free spool when we run this out, but we will do that later. I'm just explaining that. This is the charging port. You get the charger with it. You want to charge this for at least 14 hours, and they're good for 30 hours after you charge them. That's what the book says. So there's a brief introduction on that stuff. From there, we're going to go over to the H winch, and I'll show you the difference. So if you notice, the 55 H winch has just this rig on top of it, and that's just the spooler that guides your cable over the top. The 55H has a despooler on it. So when you hit the despooler button, it'll just feed the cable right out. And that's what this mechanism does here. It's hydraulically driven. There's a laser light in here that keeps track of how much cable's out. And when this pulls all the way up and pulls all the way in, it actually stops the winch so you can't crush this. On the other winch, it will not do that. So you have to be very careful about that. That's one of the good things about this, it's Pro. When you wire these winches onto your tractor, critical. So we're gonna come over here. This one here is all wired up. So we gotta put this plug-in in. That comes with the winch in the manual tube. Here's your manual tube. And when you open this up, that plug-in will be in the top with the instruction manuals for the winch. And it recommends that you take the power for this off your battery. Positive side, negative side, right off your battery. If you have to, you can go right to the key ignition like we did on this tractor and get your power. But that's the best way to run it. You should use 10 gauge wire to wire this in. There's instructions in the manual kit. They show you how to wire that. The center pin is positive. The number 4 o'clock pin is your negative. If you hook it any way other different than that, it will not work. If you have questions on wiring it or you don't get the sheet, please call Hud-Son. But every winch leaves here with it in the manual tube. At that, we'll leave that alone. So now when we got this plug installed, we're ready to operate our winch. So this cord, the orange cord, brings power from the tractor into the winch, into this plug-in. And then from this plug-in, we go to our remote control box, or we go to our hand lanyard, which I've got hooked up right now. This is our hand lanyard. So if anything fails on the remote control, you still got this for backup. So currently I've got this installed. The only way to change that is real simple. You unplug the hand lanyard and simply just plug in the remote control one. So now we just went from hand operation to remote control. With the hand lanyard, we'll go over how that runs in just a second, but we will start with the remote control end of it. There is a carrying spot on the winches for this hand lanyard. Coil it right up, and it sits neatly in this pocket, just like that. If you're in the woods, I recommend keep this in the cab of your tractor. At this point, we're going to start up. We've covered the wiring. You got to pay attention to that. That's critical. On these winches, there's only a few grease spots. There's one here on the lower pulley assembly. Right here's a grease fitting. And there's another grease fitting right up here. That's the only 2 grease fittings that I know of on the whole winch. And they are in the lube order. The drive chains, they recommend to lube them with a chain lube, a stiff chain lube, so it does not sling off every 300 hours. I've had my winch for years, and honestly, I've never lubed it. So I just put a light spray on it with some diesel fuel once a year, and that's it. Keep the rust down. Other than that, these are great winches. They pull massive amounts of wood. So that said, we're going to do a little demo here and get set up. So we're going to start up the tractor. I'm going to go over the buttons and show you how that cable actually works with the remote controller. Then we're going to start shut her down, change the plugs, and we're going to go to the hand lanyard, and I'm going to show you how to operate that one as well. This is for the H Pro winch. There's going to be a little bit of difference, so we'll move forward. Okay, we're going to turn the box on back here. The green light is on. You can see it right there. Okay, now we know we got power to the green box, or to the receiver box. We're going to come over here. We're going to turn on our remote. That's on. So now we're going to release the cable. This will be on my belt like this. I wanted to keep it off so I can show you, but when I push this button one time, now we're in free spool. Okay, if I come back and then click that switch again, it starts paying out the cable. Okay, to get out of that mode, just push this center button here, your in button. What that will do is lock your winch every time. Whenever you push that button, it locks that winch. So now you can't pull the cable out. It won't pull. So we want to go back to that mode, to free spool. Click that once. We heard the brake unlock. And we're going to free spool right out to the log. Now I am going to actually hit the button. See, I'm pulling it by hand. I ain't got no hands on the buttons. So now I'm going to go back to center. Then I'm going to go back over that way. And it's going to just keep feeding me the cable as I walk. I don't have to pull it off the drum. It makes it so much easier. I'm just pulling the weight of that cable. And if I want to stop, just hit the button off. And at any time of any function, you can hit the stop button and everything goes dead. It shuts everything off. Now, if I just want to come a little bit with that cable, I push that button the other way, toward my body. And as soon as you release it, it stops. It's like a 1.5 second delay. Just like that. And I can come a little bit. Now, if I want to go back in, I'm going to hit this button here in the center, and that takes us in. And every time you push it, it'll pull you in. You have to push and hold that to get the winch to come in. So now I'm going to make a hitch on this log. We're gonna tighten up our chain and cable. She's going in. And we're pulling. Now if I get snagged on a tree and I need to release the pressure off the cable, all I do is bump that and you see the cable drop. I want you to focus on that cable and I'll hit that wire or that lip again. So we're going to tighten up our cable. Focus on the cable with the camera. Boom. Took the tension right off, just like the switch. And like I say, at any time you want to stop anything, hit the off button. Done deal, nothing will work. Everything's dead. And that's for emergencies too. So very simple, then turn it back on. We're in free spool right there. Shut it off. Turn it back on. It's paying cable out. I want to take the cable in. Just bump it. I'm taking the cable back in. There she goes tight again. We're good. So we're going to release and we're going to unhook that. Or just unhook it so we can demonstrate the other winch. But that's how this works with that winch. Now when I'm going to unhook this chain, and when I pull that cable up to the machine, when that end hits up to the upper pulley, it's going to stop it automatically. There's a sensor in there that when that gets up to the top, it stops so you don't smash something on your winch. That's what makes this Pro winch a little bit better than the others. You don't have to worry about paying attention to all that little stuff, especially if you can't see it and you're down in the woods. That's what that safety feature is for, because you may not know that you're all the way up to the tractor with your hitch because of brush or whatever, but that will stop your hitch from moving. It won't wreck your winch or pull your cable apart. So I'm going to unhook it. So we're just going to wind the cable up until it gets all the way up there. These things here on the winch are called sliders, and you can hook 4 logs onto that, 4 skidding chains, 1, 2, 3, 4. I do it all the time. I hook the tops on the sliders and hook the big hook on the butt. So now watch when this cable gets up into here. This is going to come up and you're going to see that stop. And I won't let off the button. Boom, stop, and I'm still holding the button. That's one of the great features about this winch. You don't damage your upper gear unit. So relieve the tension. I'm just going to push that button once. Boom. Now we've got free spool again. There we go. When you're pulling logs with these winches, you never want to pull more than 30 degrees either direction. So with that being said, we're going to move along to the 55H regular winch now. And we're going to hook that unit up to this tractor, and we're going to demonstrate that one as well. Now we've cut our PTO to length, as you can see, and now we're going to install it on the tractor and the winch. It's a little tight getting them in there, especially when you got big paws. Make sure that when it goes on, it locks. And this here is to set your PTO on. A lot of people ask what this window is. That window is so you can get to the winch drum to remove the cable or put a rope on if you want to. This nut here adjusts your clutch when it needs adjusting. This bolt here is your brake tensioner for free spooling. That is so you don't over spool when you pull the cable out. So you want this tightened up enough so that when you're free spooling, you're pulling about 40 pounds on the cable. Otherwise you will over spool that cable on the drum and you'll get a bird nest in there and it will mess the whole winch up. On the H Pro winches, you don't have to worry about that with that despooler, because that despooler keeps tension on the drum at all times, whether it's going in or out. So with a despooler, you can put a whole pile of cable after you've trained it on the ground and bring it back in, and it'll be fine. With this winch, if you did that, you could have a chance of over spooling or getting a loop on your drum if you don't have a lot of tension on it and you got 100 feet of cable out and you just pull it in. When you put tension on it, you're going to pull all that slack off the drum, and it's going to cause a bird nest. Probably pinch a lower cable, an upper cable under a lower wrap, and that's what will cause your bird nesting. So we know what causes it. We just want to prevent that at all costs. So that's why I'm demonstrating this winch a little bit differently than the others, so you got the idea for both of them on how they work. We've got our PTO cut, we've got our power installed, At this point, I can get the power up to the tractor from the winch. Simply just plug this into our tractor. The tractor's running, we've got power. So now we're going to finish hooking up the winch to the tractor.
Looks good.
Make sure when you're hooking your winch that you put your safety clips back in and your pins. Now we got to get our third link. So we've got our other ones hooked in the top. We should hook this one in the top. Everything should go top if we're going top. Pretty close. Now when you're mounting these winches, you want them tipped back a little bit. They say up to 20 degrees you can tip them, which is perfectly acceptable. And what that does is it helps the winch bite in the ground when you're pulling a heavy load. When that winch is down, there's really no pulling on your tractor. It's all on that winch and right into your tractor through the 3-point hitch bars. You don't have to lock your brakes. I mean, it helps, but when that winch bites in the ground, it doesn't move. It's just a plow. And if you tip it a little bit forward, which would be extend your third arm out a little bit, pushes the top out a little bit, it makes that winch bite in a little bit more. So we've got the winch all hooked up. We're going to raise it up a little bit, pick up our feet. We'll pull them out. Make sure we get them out of the way. Just a quick pull and snap that back into the pinhole. Very good. We're going to set it down. Checking my pressure there. I'm going to check my PTO, make sure everything's good there. We're not hooked up yet, so we've got to hook our PTO up. Take it off the hanger. Make sure that it slides on and locks. Check it both ways. And then make sure your hanger's back here out of the way. Now I'm going to test it and make sure everything's working. PTO test. We're good. Our pressure's up on our gauge. Yep, we're good. So I'm just going to shut this off quick and then we're going to plug in the remotes. So this box, we're going to mount in the tractor for here on this unit. It could mount right here on the tractor. For demo purposes, we're just going to put it in the cab. Now we've got power coming from the tractor to our plug-in. When we plug this in, this gets power to our remote control unit, our receiver. We should have power there. And we'll check that by turning on the box and looking for the green. So we got a green light there. We're good to go. We've got power there. Now go ahead and engage it, Craig. Gotta push that button down and turn it. There you go. So now we're in action. Now our brake is locked. You can see I'm pulling and I can't move nothing. So this would be on my belt like this. So I'm going to turn it on. We've got our light. Now I'm going to release the brake. Hold for 1 second. You'll hear that noise. We're in free spool. Away from you is free spool. The brake just locked again. Free spool. Like that. So this winch doesn't have a despooler, so you've got to pull the cable all the way out. If you want to stop at any time, you can hit the stop button or turn this off. The winch automatically locks. Back to free spool. We go. All the way back to the log. Now if I push this button like this all the way, it's not going to despool. That's what your despooler would work. But it did lock the brake. So if you want to go to free spool, you've got to go back again and push that to the other side and it'll stay there. That's the difference between the H and the H Pro. Again, we're going to hook up the log. It's like we're in the woods. Step behind our hitch and we can bring the hitch in. Not have to walk back up to the tractor. So we're going to take this off of free spool, push our button. See, that stops every time I let up. You can stop it at any point. I'm going to hold this button and then I'm going to just hit the stop button. See that? Everything stops. It locks the brake. So now we go back to on, bump our forward button, and she keeps going. Normally I run the tractor at about 1500 to 1700 RPMs if I'm on a big hitch. You're just pulling one log like that, idle is fine. It doesn't take nothing to pull it with that winch. So we want to back off and loosen our tension. We're walking right in with our hitch. We've got the log where we want it placed on the landing. We're going to release our tension off the brake. There it goes. The same thing with this one here is pulling sideways 30 degrees off to the angle left or right. But that's the big difference between the H and the H Pro. So with that being said, I want to show you a couple other features on these. This one here is much easier to use, but when you get your cable up to here, if you don't stop it in time, you're going to crush this housing. Okay, this doesn't have an automatic stop. Keep that in mind when you're in the woods and you can't see it, like I was demonstrating on the Pro Winch. So that's one feature. I'm going to go back to free spool, and I'm going to show you this lower pulley unit. This is magnetic. This here opens up the jaw so you can get your cable into the lower pulley. Simply just slides behind it and make sure the pin locks and the cable's on the right side of the pin. And then we can just, it gives you a lot more pulling power. So we're going to come in with it, off a free spool, forward, and there it is, pulling off the lower pulley. That lower pulley with a snatch block will really give you an advantage in the woods pulling. And every time you stop now, that brake is locked. If I want to free spool it, I'm going to have to hit my free spool button. There it is. Back in, free spool off, push the button, she's coming in. Free spool off, on, and we're good. The other great thing about these winches is when you're hitching your hitches, you can put a log on here if you got extra chokers, and a log here, and a log here, and a log here, and a log there, on both sides. I pull like that all the time when I'm pulling tops out. I leave my main two logs on the cable because they're heavy when I'm pulling out. If they're light, hook them on the sides and just get them up. You get the butts off the ground, you can pull them really easy. So we're going to take this apart now and just push this button in to release the cable holder. Pull this button out all the way. Cable comes out, push your button back in. This magnet here sticks that there so it doesn't flop around in the woods on you. Again, this has two grease fittings, one on the lower pulley, one on your upper pulley. And keep these greased, especially if they're sitting outside. They'll get water in there and they rust up. It's no good. So we're coming in with our winch. Shut off our free spool, push our button, and you can see that pulling up. This is our housing. Bring that log in a little bit closer. I'm going to stop. Back to free spool. Unhook my hitch. Now when you're bringing that cable up, like I said, be careful that you don't come too close to that. That's how I leave mine hanging. If you keep going with that, that winch will pull that up and it'll crush this housing. So just be very careful when you're pulling that up to the last end. That's the biggest disadvantage on that, is it doesn't stop automatically, but that's in your hands. It's the same thing with the manual winch. If you don't let off the clutch, it's going to pull up and it'll crush that housing on that. We only get 1 or 2 a year at the most, and usually it's because the guy couldn't see it. So as long as you're watching, you're always going to be good. The other great thing about these winches, these cages fold right down so you can leave it on your tractor, back it in your garage. Take these two bolts out, it folds right over the top for easy storage. Comes with these chain carrier pockets on all of our winches. You can pile the chains right in there. I always throw the chain in, leave the hook out, so you can just grab the hook and go out and pay it out to your log. On the back, we have the saw scabbard carrier, axe carrier, and a PB carrier. So you can carry all your tools right in the woods with you with no problem. Now we're going to hook up the hand lanyard which is stored on the winch over here. And I demonstrated that with the 55H Pro winches also. With the two winches, we got the 55H and the 55H Pro. They both come with a lanyard. They look identical. The difference with the 55H is it says 3-second hold time. That puts you into free spool mode with the hand lanyard. With this one, it does not have that because that's for the Pro winch. So when you push this button once on the Pro winch, that automatically releases your cable for the free spool. So now to put this hand lanyard on, we're just going to unhook that cable there. It comes from my remote box. Get that right out of our way. And then we're going to plug in our hand lanyard. So now we're demonstrating the hand lanyard. This one here has a 3-second hold time on the left button as it's pointing away from you. To hold that for 3 seconds, you go to free spool mode. So we're going to push 1001, 1002, 1003. We should be in free spool. Look at that, winch pulls right out. If I want to lock it, all I got to do is push the in button. Now that just locked my cable, so see now I can't pull. If I want to go back to free spool, I've got to push and hold for 3 seconds. 2, 3. We should have a release. There we are, back in free spool. Then we could pull our cable out all the way out. We'd leave our lanyard back at the tractor, obviously. Once we got it in free spool, then come back to our tractor with the lanyard and pull our hitch in as normal. Again, make sure you stop early enough so you do not crush your cable guide. You can bump that too. So if you got cable out and you're in the woods, say you're bringing in a big hitch and you're coming up to a stump or something, you can just bump that cable to come in a little bit at a time. See it move just a little and I can stop. It's a 1 second delay time. So we're moving what, about 6 inches at a time, and I just bump it. And that works great when you're on big timber in a tight spot. You hold the button in, it just keeps on going. And like I say, these winches will pull. They're worth their weight in gold. And that's about a wrap on everything here. These winches all come with the trailer hitch, like I said. All your chain hooks, flip down guard, chainsaw carrier, axe carrier, PV carrier. Very well designed piece of equipment. If you have any questions, call John at 1-800-765-7297. Ask for John in the tech department.